Good evening, I'm Dennis Ward. Welcome to APTN National News. It's been a long-anticipated event. The Pope will be in Canada by Monday next week. And as organizers scramble to make last-minute preparations, a Winnipeg residential school survivor says she and others are feeling left behind. Sav Jonesa brings us this story.
9-year residential school survivor Gary Negon didn't expect to be this stressed out.
It's like when we were in residential school again.
She has spent the past few weeks searching for resources on how to attend the Pope's upcoming visit, but the answers are not easy to find.
The survivors they need to make the phone calls on their own.
Instead of preparing herself mentally for the difficult trip, she's had to deal with logistics instead.
So in my planning, I want to be protected too as well, because we're standing in front of a evil source that brought harm to us residential school survivors.
The Pope's upcoming visit was named Walking Together, signaling the Church's commitment to put residential school survivors first. But survivors like Negon feel like they're walking alone.
It's very oppressive. It's very challenging.
The Government of Canada announced $30 million to fund travel fees for survivors, but that money is proving hard to find.
The survivors have to search on their own, like, Google search, and then they need to make the phone calls on their own.
Our own research turned up 0 results for how to claim the funding, so we turned to the media relations person for a list of who received it. This was a dead end as well, as we were directed multiple times to the same Government of Canada webpage with vague information on what the funds are for, but yet again, not who to contact. For Gary Negon, this is proof that survivors are not the focus for this historical visit.
And they should have made a link available where survivors could register, and they could have accommodations made for them, and just make it easy for us.
Many may wonder why survivors would go to such great lengths to see the Pope, but for Gary, she isn't just going for herself.
I'm going to stand there for my brother George, who never got to tell his story, and I'm going to stand there for my parents, because my parents, their children were taken. I'm going to stand there for the survivors that can't make it. I'm going to stand there strong and proud.
For those still living after the atrocities took place in the residential school system, there is pride in showing that they are still here and that they are not alone.
I just want to stand there as a Anishinaabe Cree, proud, and let them know that we survived, and my hair is long. Yeah. I don't. Nobody could cut it for me anymore.
And though the papal visit is only 1 week long, Gary Negon hopes the Pope will see the extent of the lasting effects and sincerely acknowledge the pain left.
Yeah, I carry it every day. I carry that experience every day. And then he needs to see that. And we can't move forward with healing or reconciliation until they acknowledge that truth of what happened to those little children.
We reached out to Crown Indigenous Relations and Northern Affairs for an interview. They emailed us back again without few specifics. The National Indian Residential School Crisis Line is available for survivors and others who might need support. That number is 1-866-925-4419. Meanwhile, some Indigenous groups are pleading for the return of artifacts ahead of the Pope's historic visit to Canada. The Vatican says the items, including feathered headdresses, carved walrus tusks, masks, and embroidered animal skins, were gifts. But Indigenous groups who were shown some of the collection last spring are questioning how some of the works were actually acquired. The president of the Métis National Council says returning the items would help heal the intergenerational trauma and enable Indigenous peoples to tell their own story. The papal tour is now just days away, and like all papal visits, millions of Catholics around the world will be watching. The crowds in Canada are expected to be huge. Among them, a handful of residential school survivors who are the reason His Holiness is here in the first place. For more, we're joined by Negon Sinclair with the Winnipeg Free Press and Carrie Benjo of Eagle Feather News. Gary Negon, thanks for being with us again. Millions of Catholics worldwide will be learning about how Indigenous people were treated by the Church and the state. The Pope and the Prime Minister are preaching penitence and forgiveness. What do you think, Negon, we'll start with you. What do you think the rest of the world is going to think or do because of this trip?
Well, I think the exact fact of what you said, millions will be watching, is exactly why it's taken so long. I mean, this should have been done back in 2016 when it was called for by the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. But what will be exposed as well is the fact that the Catholic Church still has not paid their mandated compensation, legally mandated compensation, and there's also documents that they are holding in the Vatican and in archives throughout Canada that still have yet to make it to the hands of survivors, and so this will be exposed as well this week.
Carrie, do you think the rest of the world's going to be paying attention to this trip?
Yeah, definitely. Like Negon said, it was a lot of public pressure worldwide that contributed to this trip and why it's finally happening.
Carrie, if the Pope begs for forgiveness, what happens after that in the context of not just Canada but the Christian world? From your personal perspective, what should happen?
Well, I'm speaking as a former residential school student, and 4 generations of my family attended residential school. And so for me, this visit and this whole event has taken on a much personal role within my life and within my family. And an apology is fine. It's good. It's a good start. But I want to see concrete change, things that residential schools contributed to, like the living conditions on reserve. Why do we have to live in third world conditions when the rest of Canada doesn't? I want to see something happening that actually changes the lives of Indigenous people, especially those living on reserve.
Negon, aside from an apology, what more would you like to see?
Well, I think exactly you just saw it. A survivor like Carrie and thousands of others who have been calling for changes in their relationship with the Catholic Church. I mean, frankly, the Catholic Church still has a massive footprint in our communities. And what that means is that not only do Indigenous peoples continue to be impacted by some of the atrocities the churches still continue to do, but that also many Indigenous peoples want a positive relationship with the church. I mean, it is a very big, significant part of our lives, my family's lives, and for many Indigenous peoples, hopefully this will get some kind of peace, which is exactly why it had to take place on Canadian soil. The TRC was very specific to say that the apology cannot just take place in the Vatican, although that was a very remarkable moment to see ceremonies on the very place that was banned us in the past and called us superstitious devil worshippers. But to have it in Canada, to have the Pope face off against survivors and to say sorry, that will be a significant moment, but will only be the beginning of what must be a change in a relationship and a change of ethics and respect by the church in our communities.
Carrie, we've heard a lot of issues with survivors trying to access the $30 million that the federal government has provided here. Do you think this could have all been handled a lot smoother?
Definitely. It could have this shouldn't have taken so long. It should have been a much smoother transition. Things were proven in court. This happened, and yet there was still a lot of fight. There's still a lot of fight going on. I know there's a lot of survivors that want our artifacts return tests. There's a number of things that were taken from residential school students that are still in museums and still in archives, and there's a lot of people that want those back.
Negon, do you think this all could have been handled better logistically? We're hearing, like I said, of survivors having trouble finding rooms, how they're going to get there, despite the government setting aside millions for those types of things.
Well, I mean, you only have to look logistically at the Truth and Reconciliation Commission as an example of how survivors should be treated. It wasn't perfect at the beginning, but they certainly learned along the way. And by the end, the national events went very smoothly, involving the bringing of survivors, the support of survivors. And, we just came forth from a pandemic in which money was made available, billions of dollars were made available to Canadians virtually overnight, put into their accounts in weeks. I mean, this could have been handled 100 times better, and the fact is that, there may have not been the priority placed on this that the government would have placed if it had been non-Indigenous people.
Gary, do you think that, or are you hopeful that there'll be some healing achieved here for survivors?
I think it's a good start. We've seen a lot of progress with other churches, like the Anglican Church, who's working alongside survivors, and it would be really nice to see the Catholic Church taking the same initiative and being more forthcoming, be more welcoming, and be willing to accept their responsibility in the damage they've done to Indigenous people.
Negon, finally here, there are calls to repeal the doctrine of discovery as well. What effect could that have?
On the ships of explorers, when they arrived in the 15th century, we're talking people like Columbus, Jacques Cartier, and so on, they carried with them papal bulls. These were decrees from the Pope. And what was on those pieces of paper was that upon arriving onto so-called empty land, and in the case of Europeans, it was land, even if it had human beings but were considered non-Christians, then basically the land could just be inhabited and declared for the king. That's what the doctrine of discovery looks like. And the basis for Canada is on top of that. It's like a house, right? So it's like the foundation of a house. So the foundation of it is that Indigenous peoples don't matter, and Indigenous peoples don't exist, and we don't have things like government, when of course, obviously, we do. So the problem is that when you call for the end of the doctrine of discovery, it really will involve building a whole new house. And I'm not sure Canada's ready for that. I think Canadian law is under a precedent system, meaning it's built on decisions that are, and the first decision of all is that Indigenous peoples don't matter. I would like to see it. However, there's a lot of work to take place before that will happen.
Gary Negon, we'll have to leave it there, but I appreciate you both taking some time. We'll see what happens next week.
You got you.
Thank you.
Also coming up next week on APTN National News, Kathleen Martins and Brittany Guillot bring you an interview with fugitive priest Johannes Revoir from the city of Lyon in France.
I'm Kathleen Martins in Lyon, France, to bring you an interview with Johannes Revoir. He's the retired Catholic priest accused of sexually abusing some Inuit children in Nunavut. He says he didn't do it. That's to come on APTN National News.
Welcome back. The brother of a man assaulted in Battleford, Saskatchewan, says his family is still reeling after Colby Tatus was attacked, after 3 men accused him of stealing while returning a rented trailer. Milan Tatus joins me now. Milan, thanks for being with us. Can you tell us what happened to Colby?
Yeah, well, on Sunday evening, my brother was returning a trailer that we borrowed off family friends there, Eleanor Sunchild in Battleford, and while unhooking the trailer, 3 individuals walked up to him, and ultimately, you know, one individual did attack him.
There was surveillance video of what happened. Can you kind of describe to us what it shows and where it was from?
Correct. Well, the video, I mean, I believe the one that was released was a recorded version of the video through a cell phone. The RCMP do have a 4K video that is pretty high resolution, and that high resolution video does show my brother pulling into the yard. It does show him unhooking that trailer, and these 3 individuals trespass onto the yard, and one individual stand on the truck, between the truck and the trailer, and launch a jumping sucker punch to my brother's face, ultimately getting him on the ground, and then grabbing his braid and delivering another blow to the head.
How's your family feeling about the RCMP response?
You know, the RCMP response has been pretty slow. I know people in the Battleford's region and all across Canada, Indigenous people have not the best relationship with the RCMP. You know, we do know that our people are arrested fairly quickly without 4K footage. So the big questions we have is, you know, despite there being 4K footage, despite, you know, the settler community in Battleford naming these individuals and reporting these individuals and knowing who they are based off the photos that were released by the family, it took quite a while to arrest one individual, and there's still 2 individuals that are still out there that they're trying to charge, and the reality is one of those does sound like a weapons charge, and we're still not seeing that arrest take place. And why is it that this individual with the weapons charge can choose to conveniently turn themselves into police when a lot of our people aren't offered that privilege?
Now that one person has been charged with assault, how is your family feeling about that?
You know, it's a very weak charge. You know, every time our people, you know, are arrested or something happens, we always hear these settlers say, throw the book at them. We always hear them say, you know, you live with your consequences, you deal with what you done. The big question I have, is that book reserved only for Indians? Because the reality is that that's a small charge, and despite there being 4K footage of this incident, it's frustrating, it's annoying. Ultimately, it's not a surprise. Like, I really felt that, you know, we're entering a new chapter in the Battleford's area socially, with all these settlers coming forward and choosing to stand against this injustice. But the policing system and, you know, ultimately the justice system looks like it's playing out the way it always has for us, and that system hasn't been designed for us, and ultimately it looks like it's protecting white Canadians.
Milan, we'll have to leave it there, but do appreciate you taking some time to speak with us.
No problem. Thank you.
We reached out to Saskatchewan RCMP for comment, but they asked for more information on the family's concerns and have yet to respond. To the sports world now, the Canadian Football League is broadcasting its first ever game in Cree on Windspeaker Radio in Alberta. This Friday's game between the Winnipeg Blue Bombers and Edmonton Elks will be heard throughout the province of Alberta. The game will also have the national anthem performed in both English and in Cree. Halftime will also feature Indigenous performers. Windspeaker Radio announcer Wayne Jackson hopes this game is just the first of many to be broadcast in Indigenous languages.
I would love to see more games, especially with Calgary. So that would be a real rivalry. But any other game would be awesome. I think also, in revitalization of our languages, it'd be also nice if it was done in the other languages. Cree is the predominant language in Canada because of our number, because of our population. But I think other languages need to also be encouraged, such as Blackfoot, Tsuut'ina, Dene, Nakota, and all the sorts in Alberta. So yeah, this is just a start, and I'm hoping to see more of this.
Not a big CFL fan, but I will tune in for that game. Time for another quick break. Coming up, the Native American Journalists Association has announced its awards for 2022. Details coming up. Welcome back. Time now for our photo of the day. And we're headed back to Brereton Lake in southeastern Manitoba for another photo from Dana Kelly, enjoying the setting sun. Great area, she says, although lots of mosquitoes this year. You can send your photos to share@aptn.ca for the chance to be our next photo of the day. Now let's take a look at Friday's weather forecast. Starting on the East Coast, 30 with showers in Halifax, 31 and rain in Fredericton. 19 with rain in Kuujjuaq, rain in Nain and a high of 8. 30 for Montreal, 25 with showers in Val-d'Or. Sunny and 26 for Sault Ste. Marie, showers and 26 in North Bay. 29 with rain in Thunder Bay, 22 with showers in Sioux Lookout. Rain and 20 for God's Lake and Norway House. 28 in Winnipeg, showers and 28 in Dauphin. Showers and 28 in Regina, 27 with rain in Saskatoon. Rain and 24 in Meadow Lake, showers and 18 in La Ronge. In northern Alberta, 24 in Peace River, 23 for Grand Prairie. 26 in Lethbridge, 24 in Edmonton. Showers and 22 in Vancouver, sun's out and 22 in Victoria. Sunny and 25 for Prince George and Smithers. 19 with showers in Old Crow, 16 and rain in Whitehorse. Sunny and 20 in Yellowknife, 27 in Norman Wells. 15 and cloudy in Sax Harbor, showers and 21 for Pawlatuck. 17 in Chesterfield and Whale Cove. Plus 3 in Resolute, 8 in Arctic Bay. Some good news for us here as APTN News won 6 awards at this year's Native American Journalists Association's 2022 National Native Media Awards.
APTN National News was named the Best Newscast. In the TV news category, Angel Moore won first place for her story on Mi'kmaq fishers vowing to continue fishing despite harassment from Department of Fisheries and Oceans. Priscilla Wolf won third place for her story on Muskowhegan First Nation starting its search for unmarked graves at the former residential school. Cullen Crozier and Kenneth Jackson were awarded first place in the multimedia category for their episode of Investigates in Plain Sight about the sex trade in Kenora, Ontario. Brett Forrester won second place for Best Feature Story in the print and online category for his story Death by a Thousand Cuts, about the struggle to get racism under control at Indigenous Services and Crown Indigenous Relations. And our Executive Director of News and Current Affairs and Executive Management, Cheryl McKenzie, is being recognized with the Milestone Achievement Award for her 21-plus years of excellence in the field of journalism. Our own Daryl Stranger will be co-hosting the awards gala with ICT's Aaliyah Chavez in Phoenix, Arizona in late August.
A huge congrats to all of the winners and to Cheryl on such a high honor. That's all the time we have for your APTN National News for this Thursday. For much more, you can visit our website, aptnnews.ca, and stick around. An encore episode of Nation to Nation with Brett Forrester is up next. I'm Dennis Ward. Thanks for being with us. Have a great night.